Hi, I'm Irene with Osprey Photo Workshops and Tours, and this is part 11 in a series of programs on wildlife photography. The topic this time is going to be spotting wildlife and timing. Spotting animals takes practice and is habitat dependent. When I get to a new area, I scan the environment, I look at the vegetation, I look at the geological formations, etc., and I look for things in that particular environment that seem out of place. Tones, shapes, and colors, like this rabbit in that green mesquite environment. If I go to South Dakota, however, it may take me a day or so before I'm able to be a really good spotter of the animals in that particular area. Very different, dry, etc. Color. Color really attracts the eye and it gives you a good chance of finding animals to photograph. For instance, in the upper corner, we have a hummingbird that's brightly colored. We have in the middle a purple gallinule. We've got a painted bunting over there. We've got the meadowlark. All of these have some bright colors that are going to attract the eye. The burrowing owl in the upper corner is an interesting subject. I knew where they kind of nested, and it was those yellow eyes which made me be able to find one of the burrowing owls to be able to photograph it. Movement is also going to help you. Movement in terms of that particular American bittern really helped me see it. Basically, they stand there very still, bill straight up in the air, those stripes on the neck and the chest, they make it look like a reed. It's not until it actually moves that you can actually see it and be able to photograph it. Um, in terms of the little fellows over there, on the right side, we have little groundhogs. I spotted them because I saw the leaves in the background moving, and I focused my attention on that particular area, and out they popped and sat there and ate vegetation in front of me. The phalarope was hiding in some high grass. As soon as he moved, that's how I spotted him. The raccoon, well, I often look in areas where I've frequently seen a particular animal or around a den or tree cavity, etc. And so I was sitting there focusing on that particular area, and out pops Mr. Raccoon. I listen for rustling in bushes, cracking of tree limbs, branches, splashing water, pecking. Bird calls are really helpful. I'm not real good at identifying warblers, but I am very good at identifying some of the more obvious birds, like the osprey. If you hear an osprey, what you do is you start looking up in the sky and the trees to try to locate him. The little red-bellied woodpecker over there, he almost has sort of a laugh. He has a very, again, distinctive call. And as soon as I hear it, I'm starting to look around. I'm listening for maybe pecking, him pecking a hole in a piece of wood, for instance, or a tree. And usually that helps me locate him fairly rapidly. The Bob White actually announces himself. He just goes Bob White. And then American Widgeon has a really high pitch, unusual call. And so that helps me identify him. And in this case, I was able to spot him when he plopped down into that water. I monitor dead snags, posts, bare branches. I'll look up into trees looking for hawks and owls that are sitting up there surveying the scene below them and looking for some meal, some kind of prey, for instance, a mouse or whatever. When I'm near water channels, I'll look for some belted kingfishers that might be flying around, and they tend to land in the same tree or on the dead snag over and over again if you're lucky. And so you can kind of stake out those locations and see if you can catch a really neat picture of them, like this one with the crab. If he dives in the water and goes after something else, often he'll come back to the same snag. In the case of the swallow, he's sitting there and he's checking out the surroundings because he happens to have a nest in a cavity. In terms of the heron in the picture below on the boat, that was taken in Tangier Island. Tangier Island is notorious for not having very many trees or bushes right along the waterways. So the herons and other birds happen to land on things that are above water, for instance, on that boat, maybe on a sunken crab trap, maybe on an old piling. So that's where I'm going to look for them when I'm in that environment. Knowing where to look, if I'm looking for oyster catchers, I'm going to, for instance, for the American oyster catcher anyhow, I'm going to look on oyster bars. I'm going to look in mud flats for them. If I'm looking for hummingbirds, I'm going to look for their food supply. So I'm going to look, for instance, at my friend's house, she has cannon flowers, and the hummingbirds are attracted to those flowers. If I'm looking for black bear, I might go to, say, North Carolina. Pocosin National Wildlife Refuge is a good place to find black bear, particularly in the spring. You can get some neat pictures. There's plenty of food supply, so it's not as dangerous as being in other areas. At the edges of ponds, on snags that are floating on top of the water, etc. I'm going to look for aquatic organisms like, say, for instance, the slider or maybe an aquatic snake. If I'm looking for rails, I'm going to look in the marshes. I'm going to look at low tide because that's usually when they appear. They're out there trying to pick up food like little periwinkles. Campgrounds and picnic areas can be very good places to get pictures of squirrels and chipmunks because people, when they're dining, often drop little bits of food, etc., and that makes for a feast for these little guys. In the case of the raccoon, well, somebody discarded an apple, or maybe it was rotten, and he found it, and I got that photo. I observe the behavior of other animals and the reaction to something that I may not see initially. For instance, crows mob hawks. So 5 crows were chasing that particular red-shouldered hawk, and when he settled down in the tree to get away from him, that's when I got that photo. Squirrels will bark and flick their tails and run very rapidly if there's a fox nearby. So when I see a squirrel behaving like that, I'm going to start to look for the fox. If I see a prairie dog yiping, that could mean absolutely nothing because they do that part of the time, but it could mean that there's some predator around, like a coyote or maybe a burrowing owl. Decoy behavior is very helpful. When an animal approaches me unusually closely or kind of hangs out in the same area right near me and is unusually tolerant, I'm going to wonder why. Does it have a nest nearby? Does it have young? Maybe a mate? In the terms of the Eurasian oyster catcher there on the upper right, he went back and forth on those rocks for a long time, and I got a lot of pictures of him. And eventually, just before I left, I spotted where the nest was, and it was in a little pile off to the side in a little pile of rocks. The Wimbrel, that was in Iceland. He also approached me, couldn't figure out why. I took the pictures, wasn't going to ask any questions. And then I spotted why he was behaving the way he was, and he had an adolescent chick nearby. Killdeers are famous for their hurt wing act. They will pretend like they're hurt. They try to draw you away from either their young or their nest or maybe a mate. Timing of the year is important and timing of the day. We've already talked about timing of the day in terms of lighting. It's good often in the early morning and late afternoon, but another thing is that the animals are more active at that time of day. I pay attention to seasons and I research the areas that I want to go to. For instance, if I want to go to Bosque del Apache, I'm going to go there in November and early winter because that's when I'm going to find the snow geese and hopefully some sandhill cranes. If I'm looking for nesting ospreys when they're starting to build the nest, etc., in my area of the country, there's one nature center that happens to have a platform and a viewing area fairly nearby, and I'll just contact them and say, hey, are the ospreys back? And they'll let me know, and they usually come in around St. Patrick's Day. If I'm looking for birds like herons in a rookery, well, timing is very important. If you're in Florida, you're going to look for a rookery that's active and has chicks in February and March. If you're in the mid-Atlantic area, for instance, at Ocean City in New Jersey, you're going to be looking for activity in a rookery more towards May, June, and July. Also, there's some special staging areas like Middle Creek. It's a wildlife management area in Pennsylvania. And in the winter, you get huge numbers of snow geese settling on the ponds and lakes there. It's a great place to go in February, March, early April. Seasonal abundance of food influences the presence of birds, whales, etc. And in terms of Newfoundland, there are small fish called capelin, which make up a good portion of the diet of the whales and the other seabirds. and they do what's called rolling in. When they come into shore, they spawn, but a lot of people come to see the activity because there's a special place called St. Vincent's Beach where the capelin roll in and the whales come in, and the whales come very close to shore because the beach drops off very quickly, and the whales almost come up to the shoreline. Certainly, puffins and gannets take advantage of these nice little capelin fish. Breeding season makes a big difference in terms of the color of the subject, a little bit of the behavior, etc. Obviously, birds get special plumage, special colors, etc. So, for instance, that cattle egret looks very different than a cattle egret might look in the fall when he's sitting on the back of a horse or a cow. The little finch there, the little goldfinch, certainly is more colorful in breeding season, as is, or say the anhingos, cormorants, etc. They pick up colors around the face, as do herons. And this particular heron is displaying his nuptial plumage. He's in a courting behavior, and it makes for great shots. If I want colorful bills on both the puffins and the penguin and some of the feathers on the back of the penguin's head, the rockhopper, I'm going to come in breeding season. I'm going to come in early breeding season because as the season drops off, then the colors start to disappear. I think about some other things too. If I'm going to go to South Dakota and I want to get pictures of deer, mule deer, or bighorn sheep or buffalo. I don't really like pictures of them shedding. I want to have pictures of them with their winter coat, where they're very beautiful. For instance, the mule deer there will drop its antlers after the rut, and I'm not going to get pictures of the mule deer with antlers unless I do go in the fall. I check out nest sites. That little wren was nesting in a cactus, and unfortunately for him, when he was just about done his nest, I spotted in my frame a gray bird, and it was a thrasher, and it destroyed the nest. But I got some really interesting activity by paying attention to that particular nesting season. Courtship seasons with the puffins below, they do what's called billing. It's a pair bonding ritual. So do gannets do that kind of thing too. And that happens during breeding season, which is usually May, June, and a little bit of July. If I want to go and get playful animals, I might go to South Dakota in the spring because the prairie dogs are very entertaining as they back and forth and roll on the ground chasing each other. I look for migrants, warblers and songbirds, when they travel over a large body of water and they run into some problems too with the weather, which makes it even more important. They will often land in the first piece of property, first land that they happen to see. And in terms of one of the places of Great Lakes, it's called Point Pelee. People come from all over the world to see species that they normally see. High Island and Padre Island on the Gulf Coast are also places that fall out, is what that is called. They stop to rest and feed a little bit. Um, that's where that happens. I was on Tangier Island and the birds were coming up the Chesapeake Bay over, again, a large body of water, and they must have encountered some problems in terms of the weather. And they landed on the first piece of land they saw, which happened to be Tangier Island, which happens to be in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay. And I had about 7 species of warblers and songbirds that I have never gotten pictures of until that time. And they stopped there for about 2 days before moving on. Spring and fall migration, you get a lot of shorebirds moving up and down the coast. I live on the East Coast, so that's where I see a lot of that. I often will go to the beach at Chincoteague National Wildlife or Assateague, and I'll look on the bayside for some of the birds that are moving through. They may be just moving through to the Arctic to nest, or they may be nesting locally, say on Tangier Island, for instance, and some of the other marshes and areas. In the case of the one picture, I have a series of royal terns, skimmers, etc. You get some mating activity, some fighting, etc. And the godwits on the other side, I don't usually see them very often at Chincoteague, but on the bay side, I captured that shot. The Ruddy turnstone was also there. He's in his breeding plumage. If I catch him in the winter, he's kind of dull looking. So you'd rather catch him in the summer and the springtime. The monarch butterflies in my area of the country along the Atlantic coast will migrate down towards South America. And they do that usually in the early fall. So that's a time that I'll look at along, say, the beach at Assateague for some goldenrod. They like to sit on that. I found them in large numbers on Tangier Island for a couple days. So it's an excellent opportunity to get some pictures of monarch butterflies. Horseshoe crabs and shorebird migration is very famous along the Delaware Bay in late May, early June, full moon, high spring tide, and in soft sand, these ancient creatures, these horseshoe crabs, come and lay their eggs in the soft sand. At the same time, you have migrating shorebirds that are coming up from South America and Central America, and they come to the same area where these horseshoe crabs are, and they dig up the eggs. They fish out of the water eggs as well, and you can get huge numbers of birds on the beach at that point in time. They'll stay there for about 2 weeks and feed and fatten themselves up and rest before they migrate to their Arctic breeding grounds. And with that, this is the end of that program. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some ideas of some places to go and what time to go. And you do want to research the particular location that you're thinking about. Hope you go to my website. That's ospreyphoto.com. You'll find information on my Zoom programs, my blogs, my gallery, my updated schedule of workshops and tours. One of the most exciting things coming up this year in July will be my Newfoundland tour. I only take 3 people. It's 2 tours, 3 people in each of the 2 tours in July. So I hope you'll check that out. That's listed on my website. Our next topic is going to be approaching wildlife. I hope you join me for that one. I hope you sign up and keep following these programs. The topic after that is my last topic, and that'll be on safety in the field, ethics, and how to capture action and be able to anticipate what's going to happen. I have a newsletter that's free. It comes out about every 2 months, and you can check that link there and sign up for it. You can sign up for my YouTube channel with that link below. You can also go to my website and be able to do that in addition to just using those 2 links. There's little icons at the top that'll help you be able to do so. So I hope you come back again for future topics. I hope you go to my website and explore it a little bit and see if there's an interesting tour or wildlife, or it's not always wildlife, but a photo workshop that you might be interested in. And I hope to see you again in about, I'd say maybe another month or so. Thank you very much for attending.